Welcome. I'm your host, Paula Scatoloni, the founder of Transformative Harmonics, a podcast that offers listeners a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science. Welcome back. I am so thrilled to be here today. I'm really enjoying this shift for myself of being able to have guests come on because I get to talk to some of my favorite people. And today I have one of those people with me, and I'm just going to enjoy spending an hour and sharing this time with her and with you all. So as always, in this podcast, I invite you hopefully to have a warm cup of tea or a cool drink with you and to let anything that we're saying kind of wash over you, just like sound, where some of what we're saying may land and feel really resonant, and some may go somewhere and sit, and you can draw upon it later. So remembering that there's all types of ways of taking in information and changing. And this is an opportunity to receive if you have that space and time today to listen. So my guest today is someone I've known over a year, definitely over a year now, Jodi Silverman. She's an LCSW and a holistic psychotherapist. She's also a Reiki Master teacher and an integrative trauma specialist, exploring the intersection of nervous system science and spiritual healing. Jodi works with individuals healing from betrayal, emotional abuse, and relational trauma, using a blend of Reiki Assisted Psychotherapy, Safe and Sound Protocol, Rest and Restore Protocol, Heart Math for nervous system regulation. Jodi is currently developing Soul Woven Therapy, a signature approach that weaves together somatic, clinical, energetic, and spiritual practices to support deep relational healing. She is the co-founder of an evolving group. The evolving group is called Reiki Assisted Psychotherapy Trainings and Psychotherapeutic Reiki Community for Mental Health Clinicians on Facebook. She is passionate about helping both clients and clinicians to reconnect with their true selves through holistic, heart-centered approaches to healing. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
That was a beautiful introduction. I love matching that introduction to the person that I know. So this is great that we're going to hopefully touch on all of those pieces today.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, so we have known each other for about a year and a half, maybe. We met in my mentorship. And through that program, I get to know you a little bit. And I found some affinities. I had been exploring heart math at that time. And then also found out about your Reiki community. So that kind of sparked some side conversations for us. And I decided, I want to get to know Jodi a little bit more and learn about her path and where she's been. And I know that you're offering a lot to the therapeutic community right now. So if we can dive in, if you don't mind, and just get to know you a little bit more. I don't know if I've heard like the full version of your story. And so we could start there if that feels okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So the full version would probably take, I don't know, a couple hours, just because it's a long and windy path, which is typically the way I seem to move through the world. But as you mentioned, I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I graduated with my master's back in 1995. And I immediately entered the field and kind of just did social work for 25 years in various settings. So I was working with teenage girls who were adjudicated dependent and delinquent by family court. I became a therapist. Then I moved into more of like a supervisory role, because that's what happens when you're a social worker and you're fairly good at what you do. Like you move up the ranks pretty quickly. And ultimately I landed in a community mental health center in more administrative role for the bulk of my career. And during that time, I always was looking for like my calling, my passion, because even though I liked what I was doing, it didn't really touch my heart in the way that I needed something to. So I'm always seeking, always looking, always seeking, always looking. And I always had an interest in the metaphysical, in spiritual, past lives, always dabbling tarot cards, always dabbling in and out of these spaces. And I came to understand that there were periods of time in my life in which I was what I would call awake, which means I was connected and dialed in. And then there were large parts of my life in which I was asleep, which means I was kind of like shut down and just kind of going on with normal life. And that came with, having a family and a mortgage and all the things that happen with life. And, let's see. In 2013, I think it was, my family visited Hawaii, and we had some friends there, and one of the people who we were visiting happened to be a Reiki master, and it was actually my husband. I knew nothing about Reiki. I didn't know what it was, had never heard of it. My husband was like, you should ask Kira to teach you Reiki. And I was like, oh, okay. Sure. And she was open to it. And, so she introduced me to Reiki, on Maui, which was like a really cool experience. And she took the time to do a full, training and a, attunement. And I played around with the energy while I was there, which was really, really neat. And when I came back, I decided to take that further and then went on to get my level 2 and my, master. I think at that time it was the Sui master teacher training over the course that took me a whole year. And I started doing Reiki with friends and family, which is how people typically start. And I had a neighbor who had a good friend who was also a therapist, who I did Reiki with, and she was blown away by her experience and asked me to come do a couple trainings with her, to kind of support her, in some of the trauma healing trainings that she was doing and bring Reiki into the room, which I did. And that was a really powerful experience. And I had asked her if I could sublet her office. I was doing Reiki out of my home, and that was starting to get weird, because people were coming in. And at the time I had young boys, and it was really hard to do Reiki when like they're watching Power Rangers in the next room. It's like, wasn't working out really well. So, she had, at that point, she had said, well, do you want to come work in my practice? And I was like, well, work in your practice doing what? And she said, as a therapist. And I thought to myself, well, that hadn't actually crossed my mind, but yeah, sure. So that started this whole journey of, private practice and doing trauma work as a psychotherapist. And what happened was I was bringing the Reiki in. I was trying to bring the Reiki in, but it wasn't quite fitting. I wasn't really sure how to do it in a way that made sense. And I'm like lugging this table back and forth, and I was doing it separately, or I was trying it and couldn't quite figure out how to make it work. And so the Reiki kind of took a back seat for a while as I really worked on developing my skills as a psychotherapist. And that probably went on for, I think I would say until the pandemic. And at that point, things were what they were, and, everything kind of shifted and changed. And I ended up leaving that practice and going out on my own. And shortly after that, the full-time job that I had in the community mental health center, there were some leadership changes. I was really wanting to leave anyway, but some would say I would say I manifested being let go. Luckily with a, severance package, which really allowed me to lean into building a private practice. And when I went to look for an office, and this was in 2022, one of the prerequisites was that it would be big enough that I could put my table on it. And I wasn't sure what that was going to look like, but I was like, my table has to go in. And I found that. And then I started to take this deep dive into psychedelic assisted therapy, and started getting training on ketamine assisted psychotherapy, joined a community here in the Philadelphia area around that, which was lovely and great and terrific, and some really, really smart, cool people doing this work, very talented, ethical people. except I hit like this roadblock around, well, it was a couple different things. One was I'm by myself in my office, and did I really want people in my office taking ketamine? And the other was there was just something wasn't, for me, it just wasn't fitting. But I had a little bit of this aha moment, which was like, well, wait a minute. If there are people doing psychedelic assisted therapy and having people take ketamine in their office, I can do Reiki. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh, I am so coming out of the closet with this. And the interesting thing is that once I did that, I was contacted by somebody from Canada. So this email in my inbox, this woman from Canada said, Jodi, I came across your website. I see that you're doing psychedelic assisted, that you're doing psychotherapeutic Reiki. And, I'm doing it also. And I was wondering if you would be able to provide supervision. And so I emailed her back and I said, well, I don't think I can provide supervision, but I'm happy to engage and do peer supervision. And so this was Liz Hides. And from that point on, she and I have been working together. We built this Facebook community together. We have about 700 people in it now. These for mental health clinicians who are also interested in bringing Reiki in to support their practice. And we are just about to do this fall's our third cohort teaching the foundations of psychotherapeutic Reiki. And we're just finishing up our level 2. We're calling it level 2, which is like just a much deeper dive and self-healing practice around. Actually, I modeled it a little bit, after your mentorship, Paula, in terms of like bringing in the self-healing piece and like really being very experiential in the work that we do with them. And that's been just such a fabulous experience. So that's my story. I left out a lot of windy roads in between, but that's where I've landed now here.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. So you've really listened and, paid attention to the opportunities, but then, there's this leap of stepping out to do something different and being daring enough to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the psychedelic community feels like it's on a parallel path to some of these other more spiritually oriented approaches. So there's kind of permission in some ways to be on a parallel path. Whether it's the Reiki or the sound or the psychedelics, we're all working with states of consciousness.
And I think that's exactly it. It really comes down to how can we help people access those parts of them that they are not necessarily able to get to without a little bit of support. And whether it is, psychedelic medicine, whether it's the medicine of the music or the medicine of Reiki, which is pure consciousness, or some other, there are many ways of doing this. It comes down to, what speaks to you and how do you create presence with that? And most importantly, a safe enough environment for people to go there.
Yes. And so the presence of the provider becomes one of the primary, it feels like things that we're kind of bringing that back from old school. I know we talked about this before.
Yeah.
That your presence matters, right?
The most important thing. Most.
Yeah. And your embodiment matters.
Yeah. And I think that's the primary, aspect of Reiki assisted psychotherapy. And I think what makes it different from some of these other approaches, because we always talk about this in the training first and foremost, and that is you doing your own work and your own self Reiki as a way of maintaining that presence and coherence every time you enter a session. And that alone could be how you use Reiki in your psychotherapy, right? Like that is a way of having Reiki assist the process because it is flowing within you and it's keeping you coherent and is helping you to regulate the field. And that's all you need sometimes.
Yes, because that is the container, right? That supports whatever healing is happening. So wonderful. So you have people, I know in my mentorship too, some people may use the Reiki for their own self-care, and then some may decide to use it with clients. And one of the things we talked about before we got on camera was that it is not well known that Reiki could be used for trauma healing, and that you and I both use it for that.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you have, want to talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that Liz and I have what we talk about in the training and we talk about with our students is that there is a fundamental difference between psychotherapeutic Reiki or Reiki assisted psychotherapy, and language is important. So let me back up a minute because I tend to use those two things interchangeably and they're not exactly interchangeable. So one of the things we learned through this process is that whatever holistic practice we use, if we are working under our license, it has to be in support of what we're licensed to do. So when we're talking about psychotherapeutic Reiki as a protocol, because that's what it is, it's based on Dr. Richard Curtin's book, Psychotherapeutic Reiki. He's got 5 tasks, and they're your basic trauma healing tasks. It's practicing presence is the first one, connecting mind and body is the second, heart centeredness, self-compassion is the third, releasing energetic blocks is the fourth, and installing a corrective experience is the fifth. And we talk about how we weave Reiki into that, right, to support that process. But if you look at those tasks in that process, they're pretty fundamental in almost any trauma intervention. So that is psychotherapeutic Reiki. It's a protocol, an intervention. It's a way of bringing the Reiki in. But what we're talking about big picture is what I called, modeled after psychedelic assisted therapy, Reiki assisted psychotherapy. Because what we're doing is we're still doing psychotherapy because that's what we're licensed to do. We are bringing the Reiki in to support that process. And a lot of folks that come through our trainings, whether they're doing IFS or they're doing ACT or even DBT or cognitive, that you can bring Reiki in to support any of those interventions. So I think that that's another important piece. So when I say Reiki assisted psychotherapy, that's what I'm talking about. When I talk about psychotherapeutic Reiki, I'm talking about like that protocol, which can get confusing. So to answer your question, as far as trauma healing goes, the theoretical basis that I come from when I'm using Reiki really is grounded in polyvagal theory. And the idea that in order for people to do their best healing, we have to keep them within, or they have to stay within their window of tolerance. And Reiki will do just that. And it does that in a variety of different ways. And Liz and I will often talk about the difference between, at first we called it spa Reiki versus Reiki assisted psychotherapy. And then we thought, okay, spa Reiki sounds a little too like, I don't know. We didn't like the way that sounded. So we started calling it community Reiki versus Reiki assisted psychotherapy. So community Reiki would be, you go to your yoga studio or a massage therapist and you get a Reiki treatment, which is your, what we learn in level 1, level 2, you have your hand placements and, and that's a fabulous experience. But usually it's pretty passive in terms of the recipient. The recipient typically will lie on a table and they may fall asleep or they go into a trance and they have their experience and an hour goes by and you feel so much more relaxed and so much more open and energy has been moved and it's fabulous. Reiki assisted psychotherapy is not that. Reiki assisted psychotherapy is way more interactive. And so whether you have somebody lying on a table, which you might sometimes, or you're beaming from across the room, or you're even doing it virtually, you are having a dialogue. You are guiding people through a process. You are getting feedback and you are providing feedback. And so that's going to look very different than a Reiki treatment where as the practitioner, you might not be able to get the same level of attunement that you do when you're actually dialoguing with somebody, while at the same time, I mean, you're also, I mean, we are in their energy field. So, we need permission for that. And that's probably another conversation. Certainly we go through this in our course, like consents, permission, safety, context, Dead Dana's, like, was it context, connection. And there's another one, which is very important for someone who's doing any kind of healing work. We go through a very specific process in order to support somebody who is healing from trauma work. And so I want to be clear, we're not using Reiki to heal trauma. We are psychotherapists. We are trained in trauma treatment, and we're using Reiki to support that process.
So it's reminding me of how we might talk about sound as well.
Yes.
Right. So trusting that the therapeutic presence and the field itself and the ability for the person to open themselves up to self-healing.
Yes.
What may in somatic therapy, we might call that when the body or the stuckness begins to shift in some ways, which would happen naturally in somatic therapy, right? So with sound and with Reiki, it sounds like we're able to also talk about them in very similar ways, where they are supporting the natural ability for the self-healing mechanisms to kick in. And it's wonderful that you have a structure around that to kind of shepherd the therapist through so they can still stay within their scope, but they're kind of adding another tool to their toolbox.
Exactly.
As they would with sound or somatics as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So a lot of times, for example, I may, be having a session with somebody and we're doing some processing, and I do a lot of somatic inquiry, right? So, we are, let's pause here. Let's notice what's happening. What are you aware of? What do you notice happening in or around your body? And I may say to somebody, is it okay if I just send you some Reiki while we do that? And no one ever says no. I'll just say, and everyone has signed consents ahead of time. I'm not just dropping this on people. Everyone who comes to me knows that this is part of what I do. And you can, because we track, right? Like you can see the shoulders drop and the face soften and the breath deepen while they're doing the processing. And I don't know that they would be able to go as deep or touch the places that they touch without that support.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are so many different ways. There are so many different ways to look at this. Reiki is pure consciousness. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the highest vibration. And when we intentionally bring that into the room, it supports healing. And it creates opportunities for people to be able to really lean in to what would otherwise be extremely scary and difficult. And I've seen some really dramatic shifts. And I will say that, and I was just saying this the other day, I have people who do come to me in person specifically for psychotherapeutic Reiki. And the people who are coming specifically for that usually have something they're trying to work through. And for those folks, they will usually get on the table. And I have to say that every single one of them, I don't know, 6 to 9 months and they're done. Like, they're like, I want to keep seeing you, but I feel like I'm done. And I'm like, well, that's actually a good thing. And so, I've noticed that is very different than folks who, it's a different experience.
Yeah. I'd like to, often talk about it as, so in more traditional therapy, we might just be tending to the mental body and the emotional body. And with somatic therapy, we bring in the physiology and the physical body. And then with these other types of modalities like sound or energy work, now we're bringing in the subtle body. So we're really meeting all the different aspects of the human experience so they can all come into coherence. And that's really when transformation occurs, right? When a person can say, well, I'm done. I've resolved whatever that was, and I'm able to access aspects of myself that I was not able to, or move forward in life in places where I was stuck, or whatever the outcome might be. So it's adding that component, which in other cultures, non-Western cultures, would be more obvious that would be part of holistic health. And in our culture, it's considered complementary or alternative, or, something on the fringe, as opposed to just being an aspect of our human experience.
I love that you say that, because I think that's so true. In other cultures, it's a given. Like, people don't even talk about it as being something separate. And so I think that's really important. And for whatever, well, we know why, but in the West, we have put things in these categories where everything happens in a vacuum. I mean, look at our medical system is, you have to go to 10 different doctors. If you've got a stomach issue, you have to go to this doctor. If you've got, like a issue with your joints, you go to this doctor, and none of them talk. And it's just so disjointed. And so it just creates this chaos in the system. And so when you can bring it all together, and again, it doesn't even have to be really directive and obvious all the time. Sometimes it can just be your presence. Sometimes it's just the Reiki in the room. I have people come into my office, and every single time, people, when they come in for the first time and they sit down and they're like, wow, it just feels really calm in here. And it's not me, because I'm a little bit of a whirlwind. It's the Reiki that's just is in the space.
Yeah.
And, it makes a difference in that way. And it makes my job easier in the sense that, and Richard Curtin says this. So one thing Liz encouraged me to do is reach out to Richard Curtin, who is the author of Psychotherapeutic Reiki, which I did. And he's been more than happy to meet with us. For a while, he was coming every quarter to our peer supervision groups. And we've had lots of really great conversations with him. He's now retired. He lives in Maine, but he is just, he's just an amazing human being. And he would say, I just let Reiki take the lead. And so this, it's simple, but also really hard, which is being able to kind of leave your ego at the door and trust the process and trust the Reiki.
Yes. Which brings me to, often what I see in my mentorship are providers, who, and all of us, I was there too, we're taught to fix, and we're taught to do, and we're taught to, use our intellect, right? And so in this current paradigm shift, where many therapists are saying, wait, but there's got to be another way, or I'm drawn to another way. We are invited instead to yield, to soften, to sit back in our own embodied presence, and to trust the space between ourselves and the client, whether that space is infused with Reiki or just your own resonance, right?
Yes.
To trust the organicity of the space between you. And so it feels like, and you can correct if I'm wrong, that often we are guiding providers into the sense of trusting themselves and deepening their embodiment so they can be in that place of somatic resonance so that they can engage in a practice that's very different than what we've been taught.
Yes, that is exactly it. And the only thing I would add to that is in practicing that way, it also teaches us to support our clients in doing the same. Because at the end of the day, that's the work, right? Is helping or creating the container for our clients to find their true selves. And when we are not in alignment or in coherence with our true selves, we can't support them in doing that.
No. So we have to practice what we are teaching,
Right.
which takes time and patience. And there's many roads, as you said, to get there, Reiki being one of them, and sound being one of them. So you had a chance to try the sound and feel that and how that's similar or different to Reiki. And, sometimes there's an infusion even in those two that we're integrating. Some of us are integrating as well. So I'm wondering about your thoughts on that. It seems like we both dance in the same places with the modalities that we're using.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the use of sound. I will say it was an interesting windy road as to how I found you, Paula. And that was through the I guess following the sound trail. It was like polyvagal and then SSP. And then like I heard you on a couple podcasts and found you that way. And, I'm a huge supporter of SSP in particular and have been using it along with Reiki. So I co-regulate when I use SSP with clients, I co-regulate with Reiki. I've never had anybody become dysregulated while listening, yet, I'll say, because there's always that chance. I think that they're all parts of the same thing, right? Like it's this big puzzle that we're looking at, and they're all like pieces of this puzzle that we put together, and they complement each other and they support each other. And using all of them together really just helps to support, again, the healing process. And I've got people who are also getting acupuncture and are doing red light therapy. And so, and all of these things together are just increase the healing potential. And I will say, in your mentorship, Paula, a couple different things. One thing is it, as I was saying, it brought me closer to myself. Especially, so I did two, right? The first one I did was the SSP one where we listened to SSP throughout. And that was really, really influential in how I, show up in using SSP, but also how I, support my clients. And the other then was the mentorship that followed that I think was another 4 or 5 months and using sound and, you brought songs into it. And I think I had mentioned to you before that it taught me to listen in a different way, taught me to listen with my whole body instead of just my ears. And that translated into, again, how I sit with clients and how I sit with myself, where I'm not just listening to my clients with my ears or even my eyes. I'm listening with my whole body. I'm in resonance with them and feeling what they're feeling in that moment and being with them in whatever it is that's showing up, which has allowed me to attune and move with them in the ways that they need. And sometimes I'll finish a session. I'm like, I don't know what I'm not sure if I was helpful. Like, I don't know. We didn't realize, but people surprise me and they're, it was like, have had a great experience. Okay. So I'm starting to learn that my job, my purpose here is coherence, and all the different ways that I can do that and bring that. Reiki being one of them, sound certainly being another way of doing that.
Yes. And heart math. We haven't talked about heart math too.
Yeah. And heart math. Heart math was huge for me. That was another thing that I stumbled. Again, long, windy path is how I got there. But like, as soon as I, as soon as I started to, it's been around forever, right? I mean, like, I've heard of it. As soon as I started to learn about it and took the training, again, I was like, oh my God, this is Reiki. It's just another way of talking about, coherence and higher vibrations and all the ways in which heart math is bringing this into the world. And, they've got 30 years of research behind them. And again, to your point, Paul, I think there's been an opening in our field right now where therapists they're wanting to decolonize. They're wanting to go deeper with people. And you can't do that through cognitive practices alone. You have to get the whole being involved.
And so we have many choices, whatever speaks to people and what they're called to, that some have been around for a while and have the research, and some we are actively working on the research.
Yeah.
And we know from the client experiences that people are transforming. And that in itself, for me, speaks a lot to, some of the ways that we're integrating now. And I love what it feels like is that we both in our communities are teaching about this language of sound, this language of frequency, this language that invites people to see the intersection and the overlap between all these different modalities so that they're not separate. They're just, it's the same concept underneath. We just might call it this. So heart math is still working with coherence. Somatic therapy is working with coherence. Reiki is working with coherence. So it's just really about, I always think of it now as a pharmaceutical cabinet. We're pulling out the things, that resonate for a particular person, but they're all have these pathways into coherence, these pathways into more resonance. And they, because we can combine them as well, it amplifies the holding space and the container, so more material can come up to be processed. And right now we know there's a lot, whether it's your personal, your intergenerational, or, even beyond. And so having large containers is particularly important right now. And so we're teaching some of the same concepts in our groups. And so I love that there's entry points for people to meet you and come and experience you and find your way over to the sound, or vice versa. And I also love that there's a book that people can reference for the Reiki to just keep a container around it if they want that guidance, because that is important for being able to, stay in your role if you're deciding to keep your license and work with the license.
Absolutely. Yeah. Richard Curtin was way ahead of his time. And, he'll say he didn't write the book, Reiki did.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, he shared with us that he just always trusted that Reiki would show him the way. And, not that he wasn't careful. I mean, he would screen people. That's another thing we talk about in our training. Like there are some people that Reiki is not going to be appropriate for. There are some people that you're just not going to want to offer table work to, for, whether that has to do with boundaries or their own internal processes, safety. There's just a lot of things to think about. But again, that doesn't mean that Reiki can't be a part of the way you show up in the world. And, one thing I remember from my original Reiki Usui Reiki Master training. And I did go on to get I got the Holy Fire Master training and the Karuna Master training. And I've continued with a mentor of mine I think I've been working with her for about 10 years now on the integration of Reiki and mental health. But when you get to that level, you are making a decision to be the energy, right? Like that was one of the things that Usui taught. And so it never leaves you. And I think that that's an important piece too, which is even if you decide, I'm going to have Reiki be as a separate thing. Oh, and I'll talk about that in a sec too. The energy is still flowing. You're still a conduit and have still have the vibration of a Reiki master. And so that's showing up in the room. And if you are intentional about it, even if you're not using it as a treatment, it's still creating a container. And so I just think that's really cool for those of us who are therapists and have decided to go on to that level of Reiki training. You're already bringing it in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people ask, and I think this is an important distinction. Well, what if I want to have my psychotherapy clients, but I want to do Reiki treatments, like typical community Reiki treatments also? Can I do them under the same business? And the consensus is no. If you have a psychotherapy practice and you are licensed, you probably should not be doing community Reiki or straight Reiki under that business because you're not licensed to do that. You're licensed to do psychotherapy. So for people who are not using Reiki to support psychotherapy, but are doing Reiki separate, the recommendation is that you do that under a separate business altogether, and that it's not a part of what you do as a therapist. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
Yes.
And that your clients shouldn't be flipping between the two.
Yes. So you have two businesses, to everything's split. So they're functioning as two separate entities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is important to have these guidelines and structures in place to help the therapist after they've received the training. And I don't know if anyone else offers this besides you. So I'm very glad that, you've come into my community. And these are questions I get all the time once the clinicians are certified or they complete the class. And our use of it is integrated into the sound. So we're not distinctly, separating it. It's part of the journey process. And so I think that it's good to have places where some of these more technical and legal questions can get answered. So I'm very much appreciating that. And in your community, is there anything else that is important for us to know while we're here together?
I think I've probably covered most of it. Like I said, we have a Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, it's called Psychotherapeutic. I should have shortened it when I made it the first time, but it's Psychotherapeutic Reiki Community for Mental Health Clinicians. But if you just put in the search Psychotherapeutic Reiki, it will probably come up. And in that community, that's where we post most of our offerings. So we do have a foundations course starting in September 2025. And so we are now accepting applications for that. And people can go to journeywithkindredsouls.com and you look under courses and you'll find it. And there is an application because you do have to be a licensed mental health clinician unless you work in we have made some exceptions if you work in a community mental health center supporting therapists in different ways. So there is room there, but we do require you to have a level 2 Reiki attunement because we do talk about symbols and things like that. So there is an application process, and we've already got a bunch of beautiful folks signed up. We're really excited for what's to come. And we keep learning, as we go through this, we keep learning. And we're just always just so blown away about how people are already using it, in these really cool, beautiful ways. And it's really about intention. It's about intentionally bringing the energy into the room and creating that container. The end of the day, that's really what we're talking about.
Yes. Well said. Well, I'm wondering if we're going to start to see this show up in conferences and places where, therapists are gathering, if it's time for broader conversations about healing to start to happen in the years ahead. That would be my hope.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're already the course in the fall does have CEUs. So we're already getting approvals for CEUs. And I think we're going to see more of it. And for me, I start with, how can we use Reiki to support ourselves so that we can create the container required for coherence with our clients, and that we start there. Without that, the rest doesn't happen.
Yeah. I love that we're ending with that. The provider's sense of embodiment and sense of presence as the main facilitator of the healing, whether you're channeling Reiki or not, right?
Yep.
Is being called to the forefront now more than ever. And Reiki is just one pathway, right?
Yep.
To understanding that. And so, as we close today, we'll recognize that there are many pathways to that. But if you're called to this pathway and you feel an affinity to, a curiosity, maybe I get a lot of providers who've done it in the past, but then put it aside, right? And now, now they're bringing it back. So we have places now for conversations, whether it's my community, Jodi's community, and certainly, keeping your eyes and ears out there for more conversations, broader conversations about the use of energy work in the therapy room. So it's been a pleasure. I think this is a conversation that, I would have loved to, had the last 5 years as I've been on this journey of integrating. And I'm so glad we finally have had it now. And I'm hoping that it'll be helpful for those that have listened.
Me too.
Yeah. So thank you so much for spending time with me. And I'll look forward to staying connected and keeping our communities connected.
That sounds great. Thank you, Paula.
Thanks, Jodi.